Barry Bryson here, thanking you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We are continuing our study of the Ten Commandments, and we're taking a few of our sessions to introduce the notion of the Ten Commandments. Yesterday, we talked about the revolutionary development of the alphabet that immediately preceded the giving of the Ten Commandments and made the giving of the Ten Commandments really possible, at least for it to have its full impact. Something that can be fixed in writing, that can be read publicly, that can be understood by all, that is not just handed down from person to across geography and generations from person to person in some sort of game of telephone, like you used to play when you were a kid, but something that can be fixed in writing. And that had to happen before God could give the Ten Commandments and write them in stone with his own finger. Exodus chapter 31, verse 18. The tablets of the Ten Commandments are holy things. They are going to be placed in the Ark of the Covenant, along with, later on, a pot of manna, a golden pot of manna, and Aaron's rod that budded. So it's a holy thing because it was produced by God and represents his expressed will. We have his expressed will as well in these Bibles that we hold, but more specifically in Jesus. We talked yesterday, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1, how there are three different eras of God's relationship with human beings in terms of the way he communicated with us. So before written text, before there was an alphabet, God spoke directly, as he did to Abraham, as he did to Adam, as he did to Noah, to the heads of households. And then, with the advent of the alphabet, and with the visit to the mountain on the Sinai Peninsula, he transitions to a written document. And of course, now we have Jesus, who is God's expression to us. And the written text itself, this Bible that I'm holding, exists to communicate Jesus. Apart from Jesus, it really is meaningless for us. But the New Testament does exist to communicate a person, and that person is Jesus. Jesus is particularly and specifically God's communication to us. We experience Jesus through the written text. Let's talk about the setting, and I want to begin in the New Testament because the writer of Hebrews in chapter 12, verse 18, in comparing and contrasting our experience on this side of the cross with their experience on Mount Sinai is totally different, something that we're going to take a whole session to talk about at the end of our study. But I just want to read his description of their experience in Exodus chapters 19 and 20. You have not come to a mountain that may be touched, to a blazing fire, to darkness and gloom and whirlwind and the blast of the trumpet, a sound of words which was such that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them. They could not bear the command, even if a beast touches the mountain, it will be stoned. So terrible was the sight that Moses said, I am full of fear and trembling. That's the experience that is exactly described in Exodus, chapters 19 and 20. The people were frightened. They didn't want to even get close because the presence of God was so terrible in its darkness, the winds, the thundering of his voice was so frightening and terrible on the mountain that they didn't want to get close, and they were not permitted to get close to the mountain. They had to consecrate themselves for 3 days, as chapter 19 tells us, before the priests could even approach the mountain. Moses and Aaron were the only two to ascend to the top of to ascend the mountain at all, and Moses was the only one to spend the 40 days, 40 nights that he spent up there, as we're told in chapter 34, verse 28, that he did. And he alone was that close to the presence of God. So that is the setting, and we can compare that and contrast with the Beatitudes that we just studied, because they are They are intended to parallel and contrast the giving of the Ten Commandments. Jesus going up on the mountain, beginning the giving of his teaching with a short list, but giving blessings, not commands. Blessings that we learn make greater demands on us than the Ten Commandments ever made on humanity. But he calls people to himself. They get close. He calls out his disciples from among the people, and they are the closest circle to him. That's not the experience that the people had. It would have imprinted a great deal of fear and awe, shock and awe on the people as they came to the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments. And even though God says you can't touch the mountain, they didn't want to get close at all. They said to Moses, you go up. We're not getting close to the mountain of God. And Moses, of course, did go up and receive the Ten Commandments. We have one more session where we want to talk about the Ten Commandments, and by way of introduction of the Ten Commandments, before we get into the text of the Ten Commandments, and we'll do that next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes. This is Barry Bryson, and I'll see you again tomorrow.